Hello again, everyone. Nice to see familiar faces. I wish you could be here with us, hang out at Tisarana. It's really lovely right now. Summer has started. Bugs aren't too bad. And what did we see? We just saw a snapping turtle outside the Dharma hall. So the turtles are laying their eggs down. There's a stream down here. So it's all good. So what should we think about? Well, tomorrow is Vesak. Uh, in the Thai tradition. One really good thing to do for Vesak, I do it every year. I just read a life story of the Buddha. Take your favorite life story. It's a great story. Um, better than Fox News, I'm sure. And inspire the mind. Some of the stories can be very embellished and can seem, to me, over the top. But the basic story of a man who was questing for enlightenment out of compassion for all of us, did the hard work, realized enlightenment, shared the Dhamma, shared the teaching, and that comes down to us today. It's pretty fabulous, really. 2,600 years ago, it's really extraordinary and very relevant in our age. It's not really time bound or culture bound. There are cultural elements to Buddhism. There's Thai Buddhism, Sri Lankan Buddhism, and so on and so forth. But the heart of it is very human and very applicable. So you might do that. Get a version of an online version if you want or whatever, and just read the life story and just be inspired by goodness, by aspiration, sense of gratitude. All these good things can come to mind just by reading the story. One of the difficulties that I keep encountering with people I talk to about Buddhist practice is the words around concentration or meditation. So Samma Samadhi is the word you find. And I find so much confusion among people about that. So I tend not to use, like Samma Samadhi is in the Noble Eightfold Path. It's usually translated as right concentration. I find I don't like the word concentration very much. So I'm just starting to just call it right meditation. And what I find with some of the problems that people have in this area are because this gets defined, meditation gets defined as a kind of experience that you have to find in various levels. So in Zen, it might be Satori. In Theravada, it might be jhana or Sotapatti, or these different words, which are very, to me, experiential words. Not wrong. It's not wrong. But what I found talking with people is that that sets up in the mind a seeking for a something called an experience. And that can come from one's own history. I could have the memory of a very beautiful experience in meditation, and I try to repeat that. Or it could come from someone else, like oftentimes if I'm teaching a retreat and there are 5 people in the interviews, one of the 5 talks about some really, really blissful experience and really high meditation, and the other 4 feel depressed because they're restless and they don't know what, and they want that. And I want some of that stuff. Or it might be from a teacher saying you have to get this attainment, or so there's many ways that idea of getting an experience gets lodged in our Buddhist culture. Not to say it's wrong, but I'm finding that for Samma Samadhi, I'm just defining it as sustained awareness of the cause and the ending of suffering. So that to me isn't a kind of an experience, it's more like a responsibility. And it's also, it to me, it goes back to the whole path, that meditation isn't just some separate experience that you get irrespective of the rest of your life, but actually it is about all of your life. So let's say if someone suffered from road rage, right? And they're trying to get their act together around road rage. Are you going to talk to them about jhana or satori or sotapatti, all these different high words, or emptiness? Is that really going to help the guy with road rage? But if you say, well, can you sustain your attention on the cause, on how suffering works in your mind, and how to relieve that suffering, that seems to me then the whole path is there. It's not a meditative thing that you do separate from your driving experience in downtown Toronto or wherever. So if you take that, and this isn't, obviously this isn't canonical, but I guess I'm just speaking to our culture and what I'm finding, where people sometimes have a lot of doubts. But if you bring it back to that, you're bringing it back to when the Buddha is questioned, what do you teach? I teach suffering and the end of suffering. That's always the basic formula that we get from the Pali Canon. That's very good, because that's something that we can all approach. And if I have a particular difficulty and I can sustain an inner vigilance on that particular difficulty I have, then some sense of understanding will arise. And from that sense of understanding, there's a possibility of letting go and realizing the cessation of that, say, road rage. So I think that seems kind of doable and pragmatic without saying, dismissing these other possibilities. So if we were to use that definition, sustaining awareness of suffering at its end, we'd have to go back to our teachers and our texts. So what do we mean by suffering? Back to our own minds, what do we mean by suffering? So we'd have to have a strong, sustained inner vigilance on any kind of discontent we experience. Because suffering isn't just about breaking your leg or whatever. It's very, very broad, and dukkha is a very broad word. So what the teaching is asking us to do is to have a really, really well-trained inner vigilance. Even if we feel upset or we're happy or sad, it's not saying anything about the experience. It's more like an attitude. So perhaps that would be more helpful rather than Samma Virya, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, these words that we use, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. What if it was more like an attitude, an inquiry, an attentiveness, which isn't something that you have to get. It's more like something you have to remember, isn't it? Like to remember that I'm getting upset by someone who always upsets me and my family. To actually remember to be aware of that is not saying I shouldn't have that experience. It's simply awakening to that experience so that I can see the ceasing of that particular kind of suffering. So if meditation, the stuff we do on our zafus and in the privacy of our own homes, in the quietness of a morning or the silence of a retreat, if that is serving this inner vigilance and inner understanding, then a retreat or a morning meditation should make my life more insightful. If, however, I'm perceiving meditation as some kind of experience that I should be getting, and my morning meditation is really confused or whatever, I think, well, I haven't had a good meditation. That's an experiential idea. I haven't had a pleasant meditation. Okay, maybe. That was a really pleasant meditation. Yeah, maybe. But awareness has no quality. It's neither pleasant or unpleasant. It knows. And that silent awareness, I think, is what we are beginning to see as we are taught but that's the real refuge, and to begin to establish that is very, very important. So I would kind of ask you to question yourself, do you see meditation as the pursuit of an experience? Now, yeah, like meditation, sometimes we say it's really nice, I can chill out. Yeah, that's true. Or meditation is really good, it puts me to sleep. Not such a great idea. You don't want that. But whatever, so there can be that sense of this is a nice experience. This is really makes me feel good, which it should do, which it should do. But the real, heart of the teaching is around right understanding. So if I am using meditation just to seek some kind of experience, then that very seeking is actually the cause of suffering, because that's what we call craving. Craving to become, craving to get, craving to get rid of. And so I set myself up by interpreting language in a particular way and having a certain idea that I have to get this experience, and I try to get this experience. But that's actually, if you're contemplating cessation of suffering is desirelessness. It's desirelessness. It's the end of desire. It's not becoming, not getting, not going somewhere. So once you kind of understand what the third noble truth is about, Nirodha, is the cessation of suffering, which is defined as desirelessness, letting go, non-grasping. And you understand that knowing suffering is the taking responsibility of any form of discontent, whether someone was rude to me, or I perceive them as rude to me, or I have Lyme's disease, or whatever, any form of discontent at the mental level, I have to pay attention to. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have proper social rules and social agreements where we can talk about bad behaviors. That's another thing. We have that in the Vinaya, in the monastery. But the sense of inner responsibility is obviously very, very important, so that everything which creates discontent in the mind becomes a teacher, as grist for the mill, as Ramdas used to say. So understanding dukkha is personal responsibility. I have to awaken, I have to take responsibility for it, which is not blaming. Awakening is not blaming. So that begins to then evolve a language around what right meditation might be. If I am seeking an experience, and there's some experience coming up which I think is wrong, I shouldn't be that way, then the language would be self-judgment. Because I feel my experience, emotional experience, should be a certain way, and I am not that way. That's not right meditation. That's not right mindfulness. That's self-view. So from that kind of inquiry, I see, well, what would the awakening to dukkha feel like? And that's not judgmental. It's an awakening. So as my mind moves into judgment, I say, well, that is the experience. It's an experience of judgment, experience of whatever. It feels this way. So as I contemplate dukkha and my misunderstandings of that, the attitudes towards meditation become informed with right understanding. Samadhi, not just a cultural viewpoint or a New Age viewpoint or whatever, but actually from my own heartfelt, visceral understanding. So by picking up or understanding or making conscious the discontent I feel in any moment, I'm practicing sustained inner vigilance. And now I'm practicing an attitude which actually accepts this sense of pain or anger or depression or whatever it is. I'm trying to accept it into the mind. And that's why we talk a lot about kindness. Kindness not just as a dualistic attitude to life, where certainly I should try to be as kind to my brothers and sisters as I can. We all know that. But kindness more as an attitude in the reflective, contemplative life of understanding suffering, understanding the end of suffering, And you can see if I cannot apply kindness to the inner things that I have, I'll probably not understand it. Because to understand something, you have to give it space. It has to be allowed to come into consciousness. And if I'm just in a kind of try to get rid of it, try to, annihilate it with meditation, then I'm not really practicing right mindfulness, right awareness. So kindness is we keep emphasizing kindness as an attitude. And so you start in your own meditation. So maybe our fellow in the car who has road rage, he maybe feel really judgmental about his road rage, embarrassed by it, and so on. But that's not being aware. And so he starts to struggle. Oh, yeah, road rage feels this way. Oh, wow, that's really strong. And he starts to be actually kind to the road rage in a meditative way, not in a smarmy kind of a way. And so we have like in language, sometimes we say, pay attention or give attention. It's two different ways of talking about it. The teacher tells you, pay attention, Johnny. Come on. We can do that to ourselves, but actually giving attention to something which we don't really want in the mind, giving attention to discontent, is an act of kindness. It's an act of awareness. And I think so all of us kind of are evolving our own understandings of what meditation is. And that's very personal and intuitive, and that you have to really honor through your own experiment. So like someone who has got through the road rage, I think most of us have, or got through the heavy stuff, then the things you start to contemplate are much more subtle, like the very like Luang Por now when he gives his talks, he's asked, what's right effort? He says, no effort. Well, that's a very advanced meditator who's been at it for at least 60 years or 60 lifetimes or however long. He can say that. And I can understand what he's saying, and I can, I can really kind of dig that. But when I was into my road rage kind of scenarios as a young monk, I just had to be really patient. Just don't do anything stupid, Viradhammo. Be patient, be patient, be patient. It wasn't like, oh, I'll just make no effort, because my mind was raging with whatever it was raging. So it very much depends on where we're at, not just in our practice, but in the day-to-day life that we have. But if we see that these attitudes, we can build up attitudes, ways that we can approach things, which aren't really experiences. I can get more and more, I can get better and better at accepting the fact that there's some aspect of my habitual emotional life which is disruptive, which is unkind, which is insensitive. I can say, yeah, oh, wow, that comes up really strong, and I'm going to try to be aware of that as an object. That's different than trying to get an experience where I don't have that, because it's realistic. It's about what I'm experiencing. So when we actually take on board the understanding of our own discontent and we awaken to it, then the awakened mind becomes stronger and stronger, because we're emphasizing the awakened mind rather than the limitations of our emotional life or the limitations of our cultural conditioning or whatever it might be. We're emphasizing awareness, we're awakening. And that it's not like an experience that you get like a blissful meditation. It's different in the sense that it's always there. It's always there, but it's not noticed as much. What's noticed are the objects, the emotions, the experiences that we all have. So now we're actually noticing awareness. You don't tend to notice awareness. You just kind of are aware or not. You trip on the grass or not. But you start to know that awareness has a silence about it. It's not hot or cold, and you start to appreciate awareness itself. And that's when you start to get like these analogies that I use, that there is object and there's space, or foreground and background. You start to appreciate that. Why? Because you've worked through the foreground. You've done your hard slog. You've been jealous, and you bear witness to that. You've said cruel things and felt guilty about it, and you know, the whole 9 yards of the mistakes we've made. But all the time, there is a sense of responsibility, inner vigilance, kindness and forgiveness, and just trying to be better at it. And then all the other aspects of the teaching makes sense. The emphasis on morality, the emphasis on generosity, they're all part of it. So I practice more and more generosity because it feels good. It's not about craving. Forgiveness feels better. Um, and so on and so forth. So these things all come together. So meditation isn't just this separate thing, somehow separate from the rest of the flow of life. It's very much involved with everything. Otherwise, the words don't make sense to me at least. And then the refinements come. The refinements as we pay attention to greed, hatred, delusion. Greed, hatred, delusion is not fuel, it dies away. And the subtlety of what Luang Por is saying is right effort is no effort. Well, that becomes apparent because you start to question the very sense of the doer. But these are very subtle things. Me doing something to be, you start to look at the very doer and you start to perceive what emptiness means. Emptiness of self, emptiness of becoming, and you get more and more refined teachings. But if it's in this sort of model of understanding suffering and the end of suffering, then it's always appropriate because any form of discontent or restlessness that you have you'll be informed by it. Oh yeah, that's what I need to understand. That's what I need to look at. So even if you have an idea of, no, let's say you did a retreat and you had a really fabulous meditation, and then you keep trying to repeat it, trying to get there. At some point, if you're taking this teaching, then you're going to wake up and say, well, what's the cause of suffering? There's discontent here. But if you don't take that, you could be chasing that experience all year and not really awaken to dukkha, the feeling of discontent that you're feeling. So all the time, the inner vigilance that we have is kindness, giving attention. It's not like I'm going to conquer Mara. It's kindness, but it's vigilant. It's vigilant on what? On any feeling of discontent that arises, any feeling of discontent. And you start to inquire and observe, what's that? Why is that? How does that work? As a kind of meditative, reflective inquiry. And then the result, the letting go, the abandonment of craving. And you start to see the ceasing of craving, the ceasing of greed, the ceasing of fear. And as these things cease, awareness is heightened, and you see that silence is your real home, your real refuge. So, yeah, I guess I'm just asking people to, how do you perceive meditation? I often ask this. Is it an experience that you're trying to get? Or is it something deeper than that? Is it something more profound than that? All right, I'll leave that there for your reflection.